Introduction. Being a vigilante might seem heroic in movies or comics, but the reality is far from glamorous. Vigilantes operate outside the law, taking justice into their own hands, which presents a myriad of challenges. In this overview, we'll explore the various dimensions of what makes the life of a vigilante not only difficult but also fraught with moral, legal, and practical complications. Legal consequences. The first and most significant challenge of being a vigilante is the legal repercussions. By definition, vigilantes operate outside the law. This means any action they take could be considered illegal, from trespassing and assault to kidnapping and even murder. Even if a vigilante is acting to stop a crime, they do not have the legal protections that law enforcement officers do. This leaves them vulnerable to prosecution, imprisonment, or worse. Additionally, vigilantes can inadvertently harm innocent people, leading to lawsuits and criminal charges. Unlike police officers, vigilantes don't have the backing of the legal system, which often means they can't claim self-defense or the protection of others as a valid legal defense. Physical and mental risks. Vigilantism involves a high degree of physical danger. Engaging in fights with criminals, navigating hostile environments, and dealing with potentially armed adversaries all pose significant threats. Unlike trained law enforcement or military personnel, most vigilantes lack the extensive training, resources, and backup that professionals have. This increases the likelihood of injury or death. Moreover, the psychological toll of being a vigilante is immense. Constantly living a double life, dealing with the pressure of illegal actions, and potentially harming others can lead to severe mental health issues including stress, anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The isolation that often comes with this lifestyle can exacerbate these issues, as vigilantes typically can't confide in others or seek help without revealing their illegal activities. Resource limitations. Operating as a vigilante requires significant resources. This includes physical tools, such as weapons, body armor, surveillance equipment, and vehicles, as well as financial resources to acquire these tools and maintain operations. Unlike government agencies, vigilantes must fund these operations out of their own pockets, which can be incredibly expensive. Additionally, vigilantes must rely on their own knowledge and skills to gather intelligence, track criminals, and plan operations. Without the support of a larger organization, like the police or federal agencies, this becomes an enormous task, requiring expertise in areas like forensics, investigation, and combat. Ethical dilemmas. Vigilantes face constant ethical dilemmas. Their actions, no matter how well-intentioned, can lead to unintended consequences. For example, taking down a criminal might create a power vacuum that is filled by someone even worse. There's also the question of moral authority: who gets to decide what is just? Vigilantes impose their own sense of justice, which might not align with societal norms or the law. Furthermore, vigilantes risk becoming the very thing they fight against. The use of violence, even in pursuit of justice, can corrupt an individual, leading them down a path where they become more focused on punishment rather than justice. This blurs the line between hero and villain, raising the question: at what point does a vigilante become no better than the criminals they pursue? Impact on personal life. Living a double life is another significant challenge. Vigilantes must maintain a facade of normalcy in their daily lives while secretly engaging in illegal activities. This duality can strain relationships with family, friends, and colleagues. Loved ones may become suspicious or distant due to the secrets and lies, leading to isolation and loneliness. Moreover, the time and energy required to be a vigilante can lead to neglect of personal responsibilities, such as work, family, and social obligations. Over time, this neglect can result in job loss, broken relationships, and a deteriorating personal life. Lack of support. Unlike superheroes in comics who often have sidekicks or mentors, real-world vigilantes operate alone. This isolation means they don't have the support systems that law enforcement officers or military personnel might have. There's no team to fall back on, no backup when things go wrong, and no one to share the burden of responsibility. This isolation not only increases the physical and mental risks but also makes it more challenging to sustain vigilante activities over time. Consequences of failure. Finally, the consequences of failure for a vigilante are severe. If they fail to stop a crime, they not only risk their own safety but also the safety of innocent people. A single mistake could result in loss of life or allow a dangerous criminal to continue their activities. Unlike law enforcement, who have procedures and protocols to follow, vigilantes must rely on their own judgment, which isn't infallible. The burden of these potential consequences adds immense pressure, making the role of a vigilante even more challenging. Conclusion. Being a vigilante is far from the romanticized portrayal in popular media. It is a life filled with danger, legal risks, ethical dilemmas, and personal sacrifices. The constant threat of arrest, injury, or death, combined with the mental and emotional toll, makes it an incredibly difficult and unsustainable path. Ultimately, the harsh realities of vigilantism reveal that while the desire to fight crime and protect others is admirable, the methods matter. True justice is best pursued within the bounds of the law, where there are systems of accountability, support, and protection. The political implications of vigilantism, advantages and disadvantages. Introduction. Vigilantism refers to individuals or groups taking the law into their own hands, often justified by a perceived failure of the official legal system. While vigilantes might be seen as heroes by some, they pose significant political challenges and implications for society. This overview will explore the political advantages and disadvantages of vigilantism, considering both its immediate effects and long-term consequences. Advantages of vigilantism. Addressing government inaction. Perception of swift justice. Vigilantes often act where the legal system is perceived as slow, corrupt, or ineffective. In politically unstable regions, this can create a sense of immediate justice that resonates with a frustrated public. Public support. In areas with high crime rates or where the state is seen as failing, vigilantes can gain significant local support. This can lead to a grassroots movement that pressures the government to take more decisive action. Deterrence. The fear of vigilante action can serve as a deterrent for criminals, especially in areas where law enforcement is weak. This can reduce crime and create a temporary sense of order, which might be politically expedient for certain leaders or movements. Symbolic resistance. Opposition to corruption. Vigilantism can symbolize resistance against corrupt officials or institutions, making it politically potent in campaigns against systemic corruption. It can galvanize public opinion and lead to reforms or the ousting of corrupt officials. Cultural or ideological defense. In some contexts, vigilantism aligns with cultural or ideological narratives that emphasize community self-defense or resistance against external threats. This can be politically advantageous in building or maintaining a sense of identity and unity within a group. Political leverage. Mobilization of support. Politicians or movements may tacitly support vigilantes to mobilize a base, particularly in elections where law and order are key issues. This can help leaders portray themselves as tough on crime or as champions of the people's will against a failing system. Temporary power consolidation. In areas where the state is weak, vigilantes might fill the power vacuum, and political actors might leverage these groups to consolidate their power or control regions without a strong government presence. Disadvantages of vigilantism. Undermining the rule of law. Erosion of legal authority. Vigilantism inherently undermines the legitimacy of the legal system, leading to a breakdown in the rule of law. When citizens take justice into their own hands, it creates a precedent that legal processes are optional, which can destabilize the political order. Increased violence and chaos. The rise of vigilantism can lead to a cycle of retaliatory violence, escalating conflicts, and creating more chaos than order. This can overwhelm state institutions and create long-term instability, which is politically damaging. Human rights violations. Abuse of power. Vigilantes are not bound by the same checks and balances as official law enforcement, leading to potential abuses of power. Extrajudicial killings, torture, and other human rights violations can occur, drawing domestic and international condemnation. Targeting of innocents. Without proper legal procedures, there is a higher risk of innocent people being targeted. This can lead to social unrest, loss of public trust, and political backlash against those perceived to be supporting or tolerating vigilantism. Political fragmentation. Creation of rival power structures. Vigilante groups can evolve into powerful militias or paramilitary organizations, challenging state authority and creating rival power structures. This fragmentation can weaken the state and lead to civil unrest or even civil war. Factionalism and divisiveness. Politically, vigilantism can exacerbate existing divisions within society, whether along ethnic, religious, or political lines. This can lead to increased polarization, making governance more difficult and potentially leading to prolonged conflict. International repercussions. Loss of diplomatic standing. Countries that allow or appear to tolerate vigilantism can face international criticism, sanctions, or intervention, damaging their diplomatic standing and economic prospects. Potential for international conflict. In cases where vigilantism crosses borders, such as in regions with ongoing conflicts, it can lead to international incidents or escalate tensions between states, creating broader geopolitical instability. Conclusion. Vigilantism presents a complex political issue, with both potential advantages in addressing immediate crises and significant disadvantages in terms of long-term stability and respect for the rule of law. While it may offer short-term solutions to perceived problems, the long-term political consequences often lead to greater instability, loss of legal authority, and potential human rights abuses. For policymakers, the challenge is to address the underlying causes that give rise to vigilantism, such as corruption, inefficiency, and lack of public trust in the legal system, rather than allowing or endorsing vigilante actions that may further destabilize the political landscape. Being a political prisoner as a vigilante is a complex and multifaceted experience, blending elements of political activism, personal conviction, and the harsh realities of incarceration. Introduction to vigilantism. A vigilante is someone who takes the law into their own hands, often driven by a sense of justice or the belief that legal systems are ineffective or corrupt. Vigilantes are usually motivated by a desire to protect their community, correct perceived wrongs, or fight against oppressive systems. Political context. When a vigilante's actions challenge the state, especially in politically charged situations, they can become a political prisoner. Vigilantism in political context. Historical examples. Discuss notable examples where vigilantes have been considered political prisoners, such as members of resistance movements or anti-corruption crusaders in oppressive regimes. Government response. Often, states respond to vigilantism with imprisonment to assert authority, suppress dissent, or make an example of those who challenge the status quo. Legal implications. Depending on the country, vigilante actions can be prosecuted under various charges, from disturbing the peace to more severe accusations like terrorism or sedition, especially when the state feels threatened. The experience of being a political prisoner. Conditions of imprisonment. Political prisoners often face harsher conditions than other inmates, including solitary confinement, limited access to legal representation, and restricted communication with the outside world. Psychological impact. The experience can lead to severe psychological stress due to isolation, the threat of violence, and the uncertainty of release. Solidarity and support. Many political prisoners find support from human rights organizations, fellow activists, and international communities, which can provide some solace and increase the chances of release. Ethical and moral dimensions. Moral justification. Discuss the ethical implications of vigilantism, whether taking the law into one's own hands can be justified, especially when legal systems are corrupt or ineffective. Public perception. Public opinion can vary widely. Some see vigilantes as heroes standing up against injustice, while others view them as dangerous individuals undermining social order. Case studies. Briefly examine specific cases of vigilantes who became political prisoners, such as Nelson Mandela. While not a vigilante in the traditional sense, Mandela's imprisonment for his anti-apartheid activities is a relevant example of political incarceration for challenging an oppressive regime. Pussy Riot. A Russian punk rock group who became political prisoners for their protest actions against the government, embodying elements of both activism and vigilantism. Conclusion, 2 minutes. The fine line. Conclude with the idea that the line between vigilantism and legitimate resistance is often blurred and context-dependent. Legacy and impact. Many vigilantes who become political prisoners can inspire broader movements, even from behind bars, shaping the political landscape long after their incarceration. This overview provides a framework to understand the complex dynamics involved in being a political prisoner as a vigilante, touching on historical precedents, the experience of imprisonment, and the broader ethical implications.